This is Privacy on the Ground, where privacy meets real life. We're all affected, some of us even troubled by the problems plaguing our information ecosystem. We want trustworthy information. We crave more control over the content we read, see, and hear, share, and produce. We want to know whether that photo in our social media feed is real, whether that video was truly taken at that protest or at that polling place in that conflict zone. Was AI used to produce or alter that audio clip? Is that PDF actually an official government document? I'm Kate Kay, World Privacy Forum's Deputy Director. Imagine if there were a system that could automatically generate detailed data showing where the digital images, videos, and documents we encounter came from, who made them, how they've changed, who owns the rights to their use, and even whether AI was used in their creation. Some say C2PA promises just that. It's an abbreviation of Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. C2PA is a technical framework for connecting digital media content, such as images and videos, to data about the origins of and changes made to that content. C2PA is intended to provide signals for gauging trustworthiness of content, kind of like provenance documentation indicating the authenticity of an oil painting, or showing how some ancient artifact changed hands over time. But how does C2PA really work? What are its connections to privacy and identity? And what could its use mean for our information and data ecosystem? As a privacy researcher, this is what I wanted to investigate when I embarked on World Privacy Forum's latest research, evaluating this emerging framework and what it means for data use, privacy, identity, and trust. This new WPF research that I'll share with you in this short series of podcast talks, it complements other work analyzing and scrutinizing C2PA that is already out there. But what seems to make our WPF research on C2PA different is it appears to be the most comprehensive technical analysis of the C2PA framework, particularly as viewed through the lens of data use, privacy, identity, and trust. I've been working on this research for many months. I spoke to people building early C2PA applications, people contributing to its technical specifications, and people deliberately attacking it to spot its vulnerabilities. I analyzed technical documentation and code to understand how systems, platforms, and applications built with and supporting C2PA would create and exchange C2PA data, and how those applications and systems would interoperate. I watched as those building C2PA grappled with questions related to privacy, identity, and trust, and how they addressed issues such as content creator concerns and control over intellectual property. Over the years, there have been all sorts of technical processes, standards, and even tiny strings of code that have drastically affected the trajectory of the internet and how we interact with it. It's too early to know whether C2PA will be one of those under-the-radar systems that shift the tectonic plates of our digital media ecosystem, but it is right now the right time to take a step back and assess what we do know about C2PA and what it could mean, not just for the future of digital information, but for our connections to it. Okay, let's dig in. It's important to keep a couple high-level things in mind as we discuss C2PA. These are key points that will help you understand it in relation to its broader context as an underlying technical layer in our media infrastructure. Number one, C2PA is not just a content labeling system. It is designed to produce more and new types of granular data about countless pieces of digital content and about the people who created it. And two, that granular data produced through C2PA, it doesn't just stay put in one place. By the very nature of how C2PA works, that data is meant to be shared, replicated, ingested, and analyzed by any system that knows to look for it and knows how to use it. So again, C2PA, it's not just a tool for creating content labels inside images that we humans can read. It's a tool for creating a variety of detailed and coded data that technical machines and systems can read, suck in and store, attach to other information, and share with other systems. In fact, the interoperability of C2PA is part of its design and necessary for it to work effectively. Okay, there's a lot more to this, including important components of C2PA that aim to help protect privacy. But before I explain it all in a little more detail, there's one important factor to keep in mind. C2PA is designed to intentionally insert and trace information about content. But here's the thing. C2PA is not built to detect the inauthentic or worrisome stuff. It doesn't hunt for signs of synthetic or AI-generated media or sniff out clues that an image or video is a deepfake. It doesn't look for the presence of copyrighted material in AI-generated content. And it definitely is not designed to fact-check information in content, like news articles or videos. So why do people talk about C2PA as a solution to our information trust problems, especially in relation to AI? That's an important question, not just one that requires understanding of what C2PA does on a technical level, but one worthy of deeper philosophical analysis. For now, while I'll touch on C2PA's quote-unquote trust model, yes, C2PA's technical specifications feature something called a trust model. I'll mostly focus here in this brief introduction on key technical components of C2PA at a higher level. And again, everything discussed here in this introductory overview is based on much more detailed technical analysis presented and backed up with cited references in our report. Okay, let's talk about the main technical components and considerations to know about C2PA. C2PA is not in itself one tool or one app. It is a standardized technical framework that is, in very early use cases, built into or supported by products or apps, technical platforms and systems, and even software in physical devices like camera software. It's an open framework. Anybody who wants to can build with or support C2PA. Search and social media platforms use C2PA to disclose the presence of AI-generated media to users. Some generative AI systems themselves automatically insert C2PA information in images and videos. Camera makers bake it into their physical camera software to automatically embed C2PA information inside actual photo files. But C2PA is winding its way deeper down throughout the pipes of our digital media infrastructure. Media companies use C2PA in their media production and distribution processes to track intellectual property and track use of AI in content editing and production. And one of the web's largest networks for delivering, storing, and managing digital content supports the framework, preserving C2PA metadata attached to content files. All right, you just heard that word metadata. Let's talk about it. C2PA metadata is the data about the media or content itself. It's perhaps the most elemental component of C2PA. In our report, I call metadata the molecules of C2PA. So that C2PA metadata can include all sorts of granular information. For example, geographic data marking the precise locations where media was created, say where a photo was captured, or even the location where a graphic designer was when she altered a digital image. It might include additional information about the actual software used and details about content creators and those editing content. As in that oil painting example, C2PA metadata is often referred to as provenance metadata. It's the information that is used to establish and trace the provenance of a piece of digital media. This is an important, interesting element of C2PA. As it travels through the media landscape, it is designed to compile an ongoing chain of provenance metadata, tacking on new metadata about a piece of content as it's created, and then every time it's shared or altered. Information that is intended to move along with a piece of content wherever it goes. Products built using C2PA, such as that camera or media management software I mentioned earlier, automatically create C2PA metadata, and some products also ingest, trace, and interpret C2PA metadata that's present in other media and exchanged through other products and systems. This is what I mean when I talk about the fact that C2PA's metadata is not just designed for humans to view, but for a growing ecosystem of products and systems to ingest and analyze. Now, there are technical obstacles that can disrupt C2PA metadata and break that chain of provenance, and I'll discuss those briefly in a bit. They do matter, and they can really affect how C2PA functions. Needless to say, C2PA produces and shares a lot of data. It can incorporate sensitive data like precise geolocation coordinates, for example. And it can include other sensitive information about content creators and content owners, or about the people who make changes to those media files. That means when we think about C2PA, privacy is a consideration. There are a couple types of privacy protections that are enabled in C2PA's technical specifications. Redaction is one. Users of C2PA can redact some types of sensitive metadata, such as identity information. But there are limits to what types of data can be redacted in C2PA, And I'll go into more detail on that in our future episode focused on privacy and identity. And even C2PA's own harms modeling documentation talks about potential privacy-related harms that may still occur in specific implementations of C2PA, including inadvertent disclosure of information and access to information someone might choose to redact or delete. Now let's talk about another important factor when we think about C2PA: identity. Sure, some people and companies want to ensure that their identities are always attached to their creations. They want their personal stamp, their company brand, always attached to the content they make or own. And they want to intentionally assert intellectual property rights or to intentionally distinguish the genuine media they produce from all that synthetic AI-generated stuff out there. For that reason, there are technical methods for asserting identity in the C2PA data workflow and for connecting identity systems, commercial and government identity systems, to the C2PA workflow. But just briefly, let's ponder that for a minute. A lot of people snapping photos or sharing videos online don't need or even want to be identified. Again, redaction of some types of sensitive metadata, such as identity information, is possible according to the C2PA technical specs. But like I said, even the designers of C2PA acknowledge the limits of redaction. But there's another important element of those technical specifications that's important here: an opt-in approach. The C2PA specs call on those supporting and building C2PA-based systems, let's say a camera software maker, to let creators and publishers choose whether or not to enable C2PA by letting them opt in to its use, rather than automatically enabling C2PA or requiring it to be used. But the thing about technical standards and specifications is they can only go so far. Remember I mentioned that C2PA harms modeling document? It states there is a, quote, possibility of malicious actors, including potentially state actors, misusing or abusing the system. Technical specifications, they don't dictate what might actually happen when a framework is used, applied, implemented in real-world situations. The areas of privacy, identifiable information, and connections to identity systems in relation to C2PA are very complex. I'll delve more into privacy and identity in C2PA in our next episode. But I encourage you to check out World Privacy Forum's full report if you want more detail and important references. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of technical information at you. There's just one more aspect of C2PA I'd like to discuss very briefly in this intro episode, and that is trust. C2PA is not intended to directly determine the trustworthiness of content, but here's where it gets a little tricky. It does have, as defined in its technical specifications, what it calls a trust model. Put simply, C2PA metadata is meant to be used as signals for measuring content trustworthiness. The C2PA trust model is a process involving encoded checksum equations, cryptographic hashes, and validation by certified authorities that are used to classify trust signals as valid or not. So whether those authorities deem C2PA metadata to be valid or not is a very important aspect of that trust model. And the way the C2PA trust model works, if there is no C2PA metadata to be found, or if there's a gap in that information, that matters too. If systems built with or supporting C2PA do not find C2PA metadata attached to content, say, for instance, if someone chose not to opt in to enable C2PA, or maybe used a camera or software that doesn't support C2PA, that lack of C2PA metadata can negatively affect measurements or interpretations of the trustworthiness of that content. Like I said, this is super complex and very nuanced stuff. If you're still paying attention, I applaud you for sticking with it. C2PA adoption is accelerating rapidly. The examples of use cases detailed in our report show that. Still, important questions loom. Can the framework be implemented in ways that achieve policy goals? What trade-offs does C2PA present? Are they justified? Understanding how C2PA affects data use, data exchange, and system interoperability, how it affects people's privacy and identity, and how it facilitates measures of trustworthiness in our precarious information ecosystem is imperative at this early stage. WPF did this research in part to help answer those questions with deeply investigated technical information and analysis. If you're interested in learning more about C2PA, I encourage you to download and read our report. You'll find it at worldprivacyforum.org. Up next, in part 2 of this C2PA series of Privacy on the Ground, I'll explain privacy and identity in relation to C2PA in more detail. And I'll discuss an important shift the drafters of C2PA made in relation to identity in the C2PA workflow. In another future episode, I'll delve more deeply into C2PA's trust model and important technical factors that can impede C2PA from working as intended. If you haven't already, please follow or subscribe to this podcast to make sure you hear those talks about C2PA. I'm Kate Kay. Thanks so much for listening.